My dear friend, perhaps you have wondered what would happen if, the very moment you stopped trying to explain everything, everything then began to wonderfully arrange itself. When you focus on your very self, silently observing, uninvited distractions gradually dissipate like morning mist vanishing as the sun rises. The clarity in your mind becomes sharper, and the clamorous, bustling noises of the world outside seem to lose their gripping power. You stop chasing, and strangely, good things, opportunities, begin to find their way to you, gently and naturally. Silence suddenly becomes your hidden strength. Stillness becomes your wise strategy. And then, without any warning, the pieces of life, seemingly disparate, suddenly begin to fit together perfectly. Not because you forced them, but because, finally, you allowed them to operate freely. In silence, you become steadfast, unshakable. In stillness, you become strong, unstoppable. In a few moments, I will explore with you how focusing inward and maintaining stillness is indeed the key to strength, peace, and true harmony. You were not born to chase noises. You have spent too much of your life responding to yearn, zayin, cacophony, noise of the world. External voices, constantly telling you what to do, where to go, what truly matters. But the truth is, you were not born to chase those clamors. You were born to create order from that very chaos. The man who devotes all his energy merely to reacting to external circumstances will never build anything lasting. He only runs, running ceaselessly. But when you focus on your own thoughts, when you listen to the quiet voice from deep within, you will stop chasing and you will begin to create. Why is this so powerful? Because this world will always have distractions, always have gossip, criticism, rounds of applause, or even harsh rejections. None of these can help you build your dreams. Silence, on the other hand, is the fertile ground, where seeds of ideas are sown, germinate, and bear fruit. When you eliminate unnecessary noise, you will discover what truly matters to you, not what others think should matter to you. You achieve stillness by cutting unnecessary speech, declining pointless conversations, and choosing purposeful solitude over shallow, noisy relationships. You sit with your own plans, you write them down, you ponder, refine them in silence, and then you act. Try to picture this. There are two men working in the same factory. One man talks all day about what he will do someday. He talks incessantly about future plans. The other just listens, works silently, and quietly studies the machines. After a year, try to guess who will be promoted. Not the talker, but the diligent doer. Now, ask yourself, how much of your strength is leaking through conversations, through dialogues that bring you no benefit? What could you build if you stopped trying to explain yourself to those who never or do not want to understand your vision? Stillness, it builds a kind of strength that noise can never reach. When a man learns to be still, truly still, he begins to accumulate an energy, a power that others cannot see. This strength does not roar, does not show off. It quietly gathers, like water behind a sturdy dam. It grows with time, silently, heavily, and unstoppably. People often mistake movement for progress, but not all movement leads you forward. Many people are just spinning their wheels, exhausting themselves while going nowhere. You don't need to be everywhere. You just need to be truly effective right where you are. And that begins with stillness. Thinking carefully before acting. Choosing cautiously before speaking. In silence, your thoughts become sharp tools, but in noise, they scatter like dust in the wind. To develop inner strength, you must sit quietly with your purpose. Review it every morning. Refuse to be disturbed. Close the door to your mind. Protect your mind like a blacksmith protects his fire from drafts of wind. Imagine this, a man who never misses his quiet time before starting work each day. He doesn't gossip. He doesn't argue pointlessly. Colleagues might laugh at him, thinking he's too serious, too different. But when opportunity arrives, he is the only one ready. They wonder why. But you and I, we know why. Because his strength was forged in silence. Are you protecting your time as if it were something sacred? Or are you letting the world steal it minute by minute? Remember, what grows in stillness will endure. But what grows in noise will quickly wither. You must master your attention, like a warrior guards his sword. There is no real progress without focus, and there is no real focus without silence. This is a law, not a theory, not a hollow quote, but a law. Just as gravity pulls you down, distractions will pull you away from your purpose, away from your strength, away from the future you long for. Most people do not fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because they lack focus. Their attention is scattered. Their presence is diluted. They are everywhere, and at the same time, nowhere at all. Your attention is not just a mental function. It is your most sacred possession. What you give it to is what you are giving your life to. Where your attention flows, your energy follows. And where your energy goes, your future will be nurtured there, or it will decay. Ask yourself, what are you giving your attention to? Gossip? Sensational news? Are you consuming noise, or are you creating meaning? Every time you allow your mind to be stolen by trivialities, you are surrendering a piece of your power. Most people lose their potential, not through major mistakes, but through thousands of small leaks, idle talk, unnecessary gatherings, worthless opinions. They are not harmless. They are thieves, and what they steal is priceless. A wise man understands this. Therefore, he becomes ruthless in managing his attention. He does not give it away freely. He does not offer it to noise. He does not scatter it on scraps. He chooses what enters his mind, like a warrior, chooses his battles, deliberately, decisively, and defensively. Just as a swordsman sharpens his blade, you must sharpen your focus. Keep it clean. Keep it protected. Use it with intention. Treat it like a weapon. Because in a distracted world, attention is power. When you focus on yourself, something remarkable happens. Your energy no longer leaks, it multiplies. Your mind becomes lighter. Ideas begin to appear. Time seems to stretch. Small steps feel significant. You see things more clearly. You feel more deeply. You move more purposefully. But when you scatter your attention, you grow weak. Not because you are inherently weak, but because you are divided. Half your mind is in the past. Half is in the future. A piece of it is entangled in someone else's drama. Another piece is lost in yesterday's mistake. And all that division leaves you tired, unfocused, and ineffective. In every town there is always an old craftsman. He doesn't speak much. He doesn't show up at every event. He doesn't chase every trade. He only sharpens one tool, one skill, one single purpose, day after day, year after year. And in the end, when everyone else is burnt out or forgotten, he becomes the master they all rely on. Why? Because he preserved his attention. He chose silence, and in that silence he created greatness. The modern world fears silence. It fills every gap with noise, music in every car, ads in every app, opinions in every corner. We have been trained to fill every moment, every second, with something, anything, but a man of depth, he seeks the opposite. He carves out silence, as if it were gold, because it truly is. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of yourself. It is where your focus sharpens. It is where your will returns. It is where your future forms. So, ask yourself, are you treating your mind like a sword, sharp and protected, or like a rag, discarded and forgotten? Do you move with precision, or do you drift with distractions? Do you choose your thoughts, or are they choosing you? Every minute spent in silence is an investment. Every hour of focused work is a sharpening stone. Every decision to ignore the trivial is a declaration. My mind is mine. My future is mine. My power is mine. Control your attention, and you control your outcome. Let others chase noise. You chase clarity. Let others scatter. You sharpen. Let others lose themselves. You find yourself. You grow fastest when nobody is watching. Most people want the appearance of victory. They want to be seen, climbing the mountain. They want to be admired along the way. They want to be photographed at the summit of glory. But very few want to climb in silence. Even fewer are willing to sweat in obscurity, fall in secret, and rise again without any witness. They crave recognition more than the result. They chase praise more than progress. But all greatness, true greatness, begins far away from the crowd. The roots of anything powerful grow in the dark. You don't see them, but they are there, gripping, expanding, preparing the tree to rise. No strong man becomes strong in front of the world. He becomes strong when no one is looking, when the room is empty, when there is no hand to clap, no eye to watch, no voice to encourage. That is where strength is born. That is where resilience is built. The man who learns to rise in silence becomes indestructible. He doesn't require applause to start. He doesn't wait for validation to continue. His drive is internal. While others speak of what they plan to do, he is already doing it. While others post about their goals, he is mastering the grind. While others seek admiration, he seeks refinement. He understands that the path to greatness is often lonely, but that loneliness is sacred. It is the furnace where all noise is burned off and only truth remains. Why is this essential? Because the world pays attention to outcomes, not intentions. No one is rewarded for dreams spoken. Only dreams achieved have value. You could spend your entire life telling others how much you want success, how committed you are, how serious your goals are. But unless you are working, when no one sees, all those words mean nothing. When you stop trying to prove you're improving, you create the space to actually improve. True growth requires freedom, and you are most free when you are alone with your work, free from the pressure to impress, free from comparisons, free from judgment. In this space, you can fail without shame and succeed without noise. You can try, refine, and evolve without the demand for perfection. In silence, your mind sharpens. Your identity strengthens. Your mission becomes clearer. Imagine an apprentice whom no one notices. He is quiet. He doesn't speak of his ambitions. He is not the center of attention. But day after day at the back of the workshop, he hones his skill. He makes mistakes, fixes them, then makes better ones. He watches, listens, learns, while his peers chase approval. He chases excellence. And then one day, without fanfare, the old master steps down. To the surprise of all, the quiet boy rises to lead. Not because he asked for the position, but because he earned it. And more importantly, he was ready. His preparation was invisible, his discipline unseen. But now his readiness is undeniable. This is how true power works. It doesn't shout, it doesn't advertise, it simply becomes. When the moment arrives, the man who has grown in the dark doesn't hesitate, doesn't flinch. He steps forward, not in arrogance, but in calm certainty. Because he has done the work, quietly, constantly, and completely. The question is not whether you want to succeed. Most do. The real question is, are you willing to build your success in silence? Can you stay disciplined when no one notices? Can you keep showing up when there's no feedback, no likes, no eyes watching? Can you stay faithful to your mission when it feels like no one cares? Because if you can fight through those lonely mornings, grind through those empty nights, refine your craft without applause, you will not only grow, you will rise. And when the world finally sees what you've become, the fact that they missed the process will no longer matter. You won't need their praise. You'll already be strong. You'll already be ready. You'll already be great. That is the reward of growing in the dark. Not just success, but self-possession. Not just admiration, but undeniable mastery. Not just being seen, but becoming unshakable. Silence is the guard at the gate of your power. You don't lose your strength in a single moment. It doesn't vanish with one mistake or one misstep. No, it leaks slowly, subtly, almost invisibly, word by careless word, through meaningless conversations, empty chatter, nervous explanations. Every time you speak without purpose, you give away a piece of your power. And the tragedy is, you rarely notice it happening. But the man who learns to hold his tongue begins to store his power. Like water in a sealed jar, his energy remains contained. His silence is not weakness, it is conservation. It is preparation. It is control. Silence is not emptiness, it is discipline. A man who governs his mouth governs his life. His thoughts stay sharp, his emotions stay steady. And when he finally speaks, his words land like hammers, few, clear, precise. This is a principle too many ignore. In a world obsessed with expression, the loudest man is often the weakest. The one who needs to be heard the most is usually the one most afraid of being forgotten. But strength does not seek noise. Strength radiates quietly, unmistakably. A powerful man listens more than he speaks. He studies. He watches. He learns. He lets others reveal themselves while he remains unread. He is not rushed to respond, not eager to impress, not afraid of silence, because he knows influence is born in restraint, not in performance, not in persuasion, but in presence. When you speak constantly, you dilute your message. You reveal your doubts, your insecurities, your distractions. You broadcast more than you build. But when you speak rarely and only with purpose, your voice carries weight. People lean in, they listen, not because you shout, but because your silence made your words rare. There's a reason the old kings, the battle-worn generals, the wise elders all shared one trait: measured speech. Not because they were unsure of themselves, but because they had learned that every word has a cost, and every unnecessary word weakens the position of the speaker. They spoke, not to fill space, but to shape it. Think of a commander on the battlefield. He walks without boasting. He doesn't bark orders at random. He surveys. He reads the situation. His very stillness signals certainty. His silence commands. And when he does speak, it is not with volume, but with finality. A few words, a single order, and everything shifts. His authority comes not from what he says, but from what he withholds. That is the power of silence. It creates mystery. It breeds authority. It sharpens focus. People begin to notice you not because you're loud, but because you're rare. They listen because you don't throw words around like loose change. You speak as if every syllable is measured in gold. This is why silence must be trained. It does not come naturally. Most men talk to soothe their nerves, to prove their worth, to fill awkward gaps. But a man of depth learns to sit in silence like sitting on a throne. He becomes comfortable with quiet. He lets reflection replace reaction. He writes instead of blurting out. He thinks instead of replying. And through this restraint, he begins to rise. Ask yourself, are you guarding your power or giving it away day by day? How many times have you weakened your position by over-explaining? How many victories have you lost trying to win arguments that didn't matter? How often have you traded peace for the petty thrill of being right? Hold your fire. Not every insult needs a response. Not every challenge deserves a counter. Silence can end battles before they even begin, because nothing is more unsettling than a man who refuses to be provoked. His calm becomes unsettling. His quiet becomes commanding. The world may mock silence, but those who understand it use it. They don't rush to speak. They don't argue to win. They let their results speak for them, and when their words finally come, they are received like prophecy. In the end, strength lies not in the volume of your voice, but in the value of your silence. Guard it, train it, master it, because silence, when fully owned, makes you unstoppable. Your value increases when you become selective. A man who gives himself to everything slowly becomes nothing. His worth dissolves, not because he lacks ability, but because he has no boundaries. He says yes to every request, attends every gathering, engages in every debate. And in trying to be seen everywhere, he becomes invisible, familiar, predictable, and easy to ignore. There is no weight in his presence because he is always present. No one pauses when he speaks because he never pauses to listen. You were not designed to be constantly accessible. You were not built to be a servant of every demand, a voice in every conversation, a body in every room. Your value increases when your presence is felt, not assumed. When you choose where you are, rather than being pulled in every direction. The more you spread yourself, the thinner you grow. And eventually there's nothing left, no impact, no mystery, no gravity. Power doesn't shout, it doesn't chase, it selects. A powerful man is selective. He watches carefully, acts intentionally, speaks rarely but with impact. His words are few but they echo. His presence is scarce, but when he enters a room the energy changes. Not because he demands respect, but because he has earned it. In the quiet hours, no one saw. To live this way, you must withdraw from what drains you. That doesn't mean isolation, but refinement. You begin to choose your conversations with care. You listen more than you speak. You hold your opinions, not because you fear judgment, but because you know when to share them and when to let silence do the work. You stop explaining yourself to those not ready to understand. You let your results be your defense, your silence be your shield. The world will tempt you to be available. It will seduce you with attention, offering applause for every post, every reaction, every moment you give away. But attention is not always a gift. Often it's a trap. The man who seeks to be constantly seen will be constantly evaluated, constantly judged, and constantly pulled from his center. What begins as a desire to be recognized often ends in exhaustion. Something changes when you pull back, when you stop trying to be liked and start trying to be real, when you value your own voice enough to preserve it. You stop filling the air with noise, you stop chasing meaningless approval, and you begin to walk with quiet clarity. You become intentional, and that, in itself, makes you rare. There's a kind of power in restraint, in the man who speaks only when needed. Imagine a man in a room full of noise, everyone talking, everyone jostling to be heard. He sits still, he watches, he waits, and when he finally speaks, the room settles. Not because of volume, but because of weight. He has not wasted himself. He has stored himself, and now his words carry everything, others lost in their noise. Ask yourself honestly, how much of your strength is being spent on things that do not serve your purpose? How often do you explain, defend, or perform for people who do not matter in the grand design of your life? How many times have you sacrificed your peace to win arguments that leave no lasting gain? You are not meant to be everywhere. You are meant to be effective, to build yourself in silence so deeply that when you step forward, the world listens. Not because you demanded attention, but because your absence created it. Let your silence build your presence. Let your absence increase your value. Let your energy serve your vision, not your ego. You do not owe yourself to everyone. You owe yourself to your purpose. So, pull back. Watch what happens. They won't hear from you as often, but when they do, they'll feel it. Silence builds reputation, while words often destroy it. A reputation is never truly built in your presence. It's constructed in your absence, not from the things you say, but from the words others speak when you're no longer in the room. It's not your declarations that shape your image, but the quiet impact of your discipline, the echo of your results, the consistency of your conduct over time. The more you talk, the more fragile your image becomes. Talk too much and your strength becomes diluted. Justify too much and people sense insecurity. Promise too much and your credibility weakens with every unfulfilled word. In contrast, the man who speaks little but does much leaves an unmistakable mark. He doesn't build his name through persuasion, but through performance. His silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. It creates space for curiosity, mystery, and most importantly, credibility. In a world full of noise, his quiet focus sets him apart. While others broadcast their ambitions, he fulfills his. While others boast of what they will do, he becomes the man who already did it and never needed to say a word. Your silence is not a void. It is a message, a signal. It tells the world, watch my work. It tells your peers, I am too busy becoming who I said I'd be to waste time explaining myself. The man who improves in private cannot be ignored in public, because what he builds in the dark becomes undeniable in the light. That is how legends are formed, not through announcements, not through endless self-promotion, but through consistency, through the quiet hours, the unnoticed efforts, the relentless pursuit of mastery. There is danger in too many words. With every unnecessary explanation, you invite misunderstanding. With every overeager promise, you increase the odds of falling short. And with every attempt to impress, you hand others the tools to doubt you, to compete with you, to twist your intentions. But when you remain grounded, composed, and reserved, you leave no cracks to exploit. Your image becomes solid, not flawless but strong, because it is built not on image but on truth. The way to build your name is not by trying to shape the opinions of others. It's by shaping yourself. Build your name through what you deliver, through how you show up when no one asks you to, through the standards you hold yourself to when no one is watching. Say less, promise less. But when you do speak, mean it. And when you act, deliver more than expected. Let people wonder how you did it, not because you told them, but because you never needed to. Imagine a respected merchant in a small town. He does not walk the streets, telling others how successful he is. He doesn't boast of profits or drop hints about his influence. He doesn't need to, because everyone knows. They see it in how he conducts himself, in how he treats others, in the quality of his work. When people need guidance, they go to him. When they need reliability, they think of him. Why? Not because of what he says, but because of how he lives. His reputation is his shadow, always present even when he is not. Now ask yourself, are your words building your name or slowly eroding it? Are you speaking with purpose or out of habit? Do your promises command respect, or do they roll off ears, numbed by too many of them? If you said less, would your actions begin to speak louder? Every word you choose not to speak adds power to the ones you eventually do. Every boast you resist makes your results stronger, and every time you let your work do the talking, you multiply your influence. Silence, when coupled with substance, is louder than any noise. In the end, no man is remembered for what he said he would do. He is remembered for what he did, especially when no one thought he was being watched. So let your silence hold weight. Let your presence be a statement. Let your name be built, brick by brick, through effort, integrity, and restraint. Be silent. Be powerful. Be remembered. Your best work is done in private. The greatest cathedrals in the world were not built under bright lights or the cheers of a crowd. They were built brick by brick, patiently, quietly, over many years, sometimes decades, by craftsmen whose names were never known. No applause, no interviews, only dedication, only work. And yet those cathedrals still stand, admired for their beauty, their precision, their greatness. But the truth behind them is always the same. They were built in silence. Your best work, too, will never be done in front of a crowd. It will not happen on the stage, or in the spotlight, or when others are watching. It will happen alone, in the early hours, before the world wakes up. In the quiet of night, when everyone else is resting, and your doubts begin to whisper. That's where the real work begins, where progress is invisible, but transformation is taking place. Greatness is not born in public. It is earned in private, in the small, consistent choices, in the repetitions that seem mundane, in the effort that seems to go unnoticed. But too many men wait for permission. They wait for recognition before they begin. They crave an audience before they've developed the performance. They want the title before they've earned the skill. But that's not how excellence works. That's not how mastery is made. The world does not give you greatness. The world responds to the greatness you've built when no one was looking. And when you truly focus on yourself, when you block out the noise, ignore the distractions, stop chasing validation, your work becomes sacred. You begin to treat your craft as if it truly matters. You stop rushing. You start listening. You slow down, not to delay progress, but to deepen it. In that sacred space, you make mistakes without shame. You fix them without an audience. You fail repeatedly without applause or sympathy. And every time you fall and rise again, something unshakable is being built inside you. The hands of time do not measure it, but the depth of your character will. And when the moment comes, when the world finally sees what you've created, to them, it will feel like sudden brilliance. But to you, it's just another step, because you've already moved beyond it. You were never doing it for their approval. You were doing it for something more meaningful, for mastery, for truth, for yourself. So how do you enter that place of silent progress? You stop needing recognition. You give up the itch to be seen. You let go of the shallow satisfaction of quick praise. You stop building to impress and start building to improve. Your workshop becomes your temple, a sacred space where distractions are not allowed, where silence is not emptiness, but companionship. Picture a young man sitting at a piano. No concert, no audience, just the dim light of evening and the sound of keys under his fingers. Every day he returns, not for anyone else, but because something inside him demands more. He plays a note again, then again. He adjusts his hand, refines the rhythm. Slowly, steadily, his skill deepens. One day, without warning, he is asked to play before a crowd. He walks onto the stage, sits down, and plays. And the crowd is moved. They think it's talent. But you know the truth. It was the silent hours that built him. Excellence has no shortcuts, no loud announcements. It does not rush, and it does not beg for applause. It grows where no one sees. It is born in the grind, the solitude, the relentless pursuit of better. So ask yourself, are you willing to create in secret? Are you willing to show up when no one is clapping? Are you prepared to sacrifice recognition today for mastery tomorrow? Because if you only build when they're watching, you'll never build what truly lasts. But if you commit to the silent work, the hidden grind, the unnoticed repetitions, then one day your results will speak for you. Loudly, clearly, unforgettably. Real excellence is done quietly. Let the world be noisy. You be silent and build. Focus turns chaos into clarity. The world today is filled with men who are busy yet nowhere near effective. They sprint from one commitment to the next, constantly in motion, but never in control. Their minds are scattered, always reacting, always adjusting, always switching lanes. But the problem isn't that life is too demanding. It's that their focus is too diluted. Their energy is divided across too many meaningless things, and because of that, nothing ever truly gets built. A man who learns to concentrate his mind becomes a weapon. He cuts through the world's noise with precision. He moves differently. He sees what others miss because he's not looking everywhere, he's looking deep. He doesn't rush from one thing to another, he finishes. Where others get distracted, he digs in. Where others burn out, he enters flow. This is not magic. This is mastery, and mastery begins with focus. You don't need more time. You don't need more advice, more tricks, more hacks. What you need is to stop scattering yourself. The moment you give your full self to a single task, whether it's as simple as cleaning a room or as complex as launching a business, you begin to generate momentum. Your energy collects instead of leaking. Your mind aligns with your hand. You build rhythm. You enter a kind of silence where real progress is born. But divide your attention, bounce between tasks, check messages, get distracted by every noise, and you stay stuck. Not because you're not smart, not because you're not capable, but because you never give enough of yourself to any one thing to break through. You start, you pause, you talk, you forget, you start again, and days pass, weeks pass. Progress slips through your fingers, not because you didn't try, but because you didn't focus. There is a quiet power in choosing one mission each day, one thing you must complete fully, deeply, without compromise. You wake with intention. You don't ask what you feel like doing. You decide what must be done. Then you strip away everything else. You guard your time as if it were sacred. You treat distractions like enemies. You work not for applause, not for recognition, but for the integrity of your craft. You build the habit of full presence. And through that presence, you build power. Imagine a writer, not famous, not yet noticed by the world. He locks himself away in a small room. No phone, no internet, no noise. Just him, a pen, and a story to tell. Every morning he sits down. Every day he writes. Not for hours of interrupted effort, but for hours of undisturbed focus. And in a single week he finishes what others couldn't complete in a year. Not because he worked faster, but because he worked deeper. His focus became his fuel. His silence became his sanctuary. And through that silence, he created something real. Now turn inward. Ask yourself, how many hours do you lose each week trying to do 10 things at once? Half writing emails, while half thinking of meetings. Starting one task, jumping to another, never quite finishing anything. You tell yourself you're multitasking, but actually, you're tearing yourself into pieces. How far could you go? How much could you achieve if you mastered one thing at a time? The answer isn't to do more. It's to cut more. Cut the noise. Cut the habits that steal your focus. Cut the need to respond to every message, every call, every tug on your attention. Your mind is a limited resource. Protect it. Sharpen it. Aim it true. Clarity begins with focus, and focus begins with silence. The world will always shout. People will always demand. But your greatness will never be found in the noise. It will be found in the quiet place where you commit fully, deeply, and without distraction to the one thing that matters most. That's where winners are made, not in motion, but in focus. Your silence makes room for wisdom. The wisest men are not always the ones who speak most. In fact, they rarely are. True wisdom is often found in the man who waits, who listens, who watches, not in the one eager to prove how much he knows. While others rush to fill the air with words, he absorbs. While others scramble to be heard, he quietly observes. The wisdom that could have guided them, they miss. He does not chase the spotlight, because he understands that true power is not in being seen or heard, but in seeing and hearing what others overlook. Silence is not emptiness, it is a vessel. In your silence, you create space. Space for insight, for understanding, for clarity. You make room for the deeper truths that life tries to whisper beneath the surface of chaos. The man who constantly speaks leaves no room to receive. He's too busy performing to perceive, but the man who embraces quiet begins to hear what others miss. The unspoken tensions in a conversation, the hidden motives behind words, the lessons tucked into ordinary moments. Too many people speak before they know. They declare before they understand. They interrupt not just others, but their own growth. And in doing so, they walk blindly, past the signs. They miss the meaning. But you, if you choose silence over noise, presence over performance, you begin to see beneath the surface. You start to notice patterns that others miss. You recognize the signals in people's behavior, the quiet truths in their contradictions, the messages between their words. This kind of listening is not passive, it is active, it is powerful. You develop it slowly, with patience. You stop rushing to offer your opinion. You learn to hold it. You ask better questions. You watch how people act when they don't know they're being watched. You study situations without needing to control them. You let things unfold. And when the time comes to speak or act, you do so, not from impulse, but from understanding. Think of the old farmer at the edge of the village. He sits quietly at meetings. He doesn't argue. He doesn't chase status. While others speak over each other, trying to sound smart, he simply listens. But when he finally opens his mouth, the room falls still. Not because he is loud, but because he rarely speaks. Because when he speaks, what he says holds weight. People respect his voice, not for its volume, but for its precision. That kind of authority isn't claimed, it's earned through years of attention, through a life of listening, through the discipline of silence. You may not be the oldest in the room. You may not be the most experienced, but you can become the one people turn to, not by dominating the conversation, but by elevating it when you finally choose to speak. And that begins with restraint, with letting go of the urge to always be heard, with understanding that your silence can be more powerful than your speech. Ask yourself honestly, are you leaving room for wisdom, or are you filling every space with your voice? Do you allow time for reflection before responding? Do you seek to understand more than to express? If your words are constant, they will eventually lose weight. But if your words are rare, born out of thought and listening, they will land with force. Wisdom doesn't shout. It doesn't race to speak first. It waits. It watches. It listens. It reveals itself only to those willing to pause long enough to receive it. And if you can learn to hold that pause, to dwell in it, to respect it, you'll begin to feel a shift. Your thoughts will grow deeper, your insights more precise, your decisions more effective. You won't just react, you'll respond with knowledge, with clarity, with calm. In a world full of noise, the man who listens becomes rare. The man who observes becomes formidable. And the man who speaks only when it matters becomes unforgettable. Let that be you. Not the loudest, but the wisest. Speak only when it moves the mission forward. A man's words are never neutral. They are either tools that carve a path forward or traps that quietly pull him off course. Each time you open your mouth, you are making a decision. You are either reinforcing your purpose or diluting it. You are either pressing deeper into your mission or stepping further away from it. And most men, without even realizing it, waste their strength, not in action, but in speech. They pour their energy into explanations, justifications, reactions, and arguments that bear no fruit. But if you want to be different, if you want to be effective, you must train yourself to speak with intention. The world is already flooded with noise. Every room is full of voices trying to be the loudest. Every platform is filled with people, talking, posting, shouting, but noise isn't power. Precision is. Real influence comes from only saying what matters. And to do that, you must make silence your foundation, not your weakness. You must become a man who doesn't speak to be heard, but speaks because it's necessary. When you hold your voice in reserve, something powerful begins to happen. People begin to notice not just your silence, but the reason behind it. You develop a presence that doesn't rely on volume. Others listen, not because you demand it, but because your restraint has earned their attention. You become the man whose words land with weight because you don't waste them. And in a world where everyone is trying to be noticed, you become remembered. To begin this shift, you must build an internal filter. Before you speak, stop and ask, does this help? Does this move the mission forward? Or am I just filling air? You'll be surprised how often your tongue moves, out of habit, not purpose. But habits can be reformed. Discipline begins with awareness, and power begins with the elimination of the useless, the reactive, the emotional. When you start cutting away unnecessary commentary, something deeper takes its place. Clarity. You stop talking about what you plan to do and you start doing it. You stop explaining your choices to those who don't need to understand them. You stop defending your vision to those who are never meant to see it. You let your results become your spokesman. You let your silence do the heavy lifting until your actions speak volumes. Picture a boardroom, a heated discussion, dozens of voices, each person trying to prove a point, win an argument, impress the room. In the middle sits one man, calm, still, quiet. He listens, he observes the drift, and when the moment is right, he speaks. A few sentences, measured, clear, focused, and suddenly the conversation pivots. The air shifts. He hasn't raised his voice. He hasn't overpowered anyone. But he redirects the entire room with the force of precision. That is the power of restrained speech. That is the strength of speaking only when it counts. Now step back. Examine your own words. Are they moving your life forward, or are they keeping it in place? How often do you find yourself explaining things that don't need to be explained? How many times have you tried to prove yourself with words when you should have shown through action? What would change if every time you opened your mouth, it was a command, not a complaint? What would shift in your life if your words were no longer reactions, but instruments of purpose? When your words serve your mission, your conversations become sharper, your days become more intentional, your reputation strengthens. You no longer speak to fill time, you speak to fill direction, and that shift will be felt by everyone around you. You won't need to raise your voice, you won't need to repeat yourself. You will be heard because you chose to speak with meaning. Speak less, say more. Let your silence sharpen your message. Let your mission filter your mouth. Because in the end, the man who commands attention is not the one who says the most. It's the one whose words are forged by discipline, backed by action, and guided by purpose. Most people talk about plans. You execute them. The crowd always has something to say. You'll hear them at every table, in every room, repeating the same familiar lines. One day I'll do this. Sometime I'll start that. Their words are grand. Their intentions sound noble. But nothing changes. Years pass, and their lives remain the same. They are stuck in the cycle of talking, dreaming aloud, but never building anything real. They confuse discussion with execution, and in doing so, they rob themselves of the very progress they so often speak of. But you must take a different path. You must become the one who lets your actions reveal your intentions. While others chase attention with declarations, you retreat into discipline. While they plan aloud, you build in silence. This is the way of the builder. Quiet, steady, ruthless in follow-through. The builder does not speak to impress. He works to create. His mind is trained, not to declare, but to begin. Not to broadcast, but to deliver. Not to wish, but to complete. Talk is cheap. Execution is rare. The world has more dreamers than doers, more speeches than systems, more talk than concrete timelines. But when you choose silence, when you choose movement over noise, you begin to train your mind differently. You become focused, grounded, immune to the praise or doubts of others. You act not for applause, but because something inside you demands that you finish what you start. Why is this so important? Because every plan loses strength the moment it's spoken too soon. When you talk about a goal before you've built momentum, you've given it away. You invite distractions. You welcome skepticism. You grant others the power to question or derail you even before your foundation is laid. Words can spread your energy thin, But silence. Silence lets you gather strength. Silence lets you preserve the spark until it becomes a flame. Hold your plans close. Let them be your private blueprints, guarded, not by secrecy, but by intentionality. Let only your discipline see them. Share them through your actions, not your announcements. Make your goals your silent project. Let your calendar bear witness, not your conversation. Every time you think of declaring, choose instead to record. Track completions, not conversations. Measure steps taken, not stories told. Replace public intention with private execution. Picture a man who wakes before the sun. While others sleep, he works. While others dream aloud, he takes quiet, deliberate steps towards his vision. He doesn't need to explain what he's doing because he's too focused on doing it. One day he steps into the room and people notice something has changed. They ask, how did he do it? But they didn't see the early mornings, the lonely hours, the silent decisions made over and over. All they see is the result, because he built in silence and revealed it when it was done. You have to ask yourself, how many words are standing in the way of your result? How many promises have you made aloud that never turned into action? How much time have you spent explaining yourself when you could have been executing? This isn't about hiding. This is about mastering your focus. This is about learning that the loudest path is rarely the most productive one. This is about choosing to build first and speak later. There is a weight to those who act quietly, a power that cannot be ignored, because when the results arrive, they speak louder than any promise ever could. So be quiet, be consistent, wake up, do the work, track it, refine it, keep your head down long enough for your hands to shape something real. And when the time comes, when what you've built is ready to be seen, it will not need explanation. It will speak for itself. You don't owe the world an outline. You owe it a finished product. Build, then reveal. Let silence carry you forward. Let the work do the talking. Let your success arrive, not with a speech, but with proof. Silence protects your energy from small minds. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. Not every voice around you is meant to hear your vision. Some will mock it. Some will belittle it. Some will pretend to support you while quietly hoping you fail. And most dangerous of all are those who feign interest but plant seeds of doubt when your back is turned. That is why silence is not just a virtue. It is a shield, a wall between your dreams and the noise of small minds. In a world of endless commentary, silence is how you protect what is still growing. Your ideas, especially in their early stages, are like seeds in delicate soil. Expose them too soon and they become vulnerable to cold winds, judgment, ridicule, distraction, and misunderstanding. When you speak your goals before they've taken root, you invite the world to trample on them, not always out of malice, but out of limitation. Most people cannot see beyond their own boundaries. So, when you tell them of your ambition, they measure it by their own fear. They interpret your desire through the lens of their failure, and without realizing it, they begin to pull you back towards their comfort zone, because your growth challenges their stagnation. But when you stay quiet, focused inward, grounded in your own direction, you retain your power. You create a space where your energy is not diluted by opinions, a space where your vision can mature, uninterrupted. You don't need the world to understand your dream. You need yourself to stay committed to it. Protecting your energy begins with one powerful shift. Stop seeking approval. You don't need the nod of others to validate your journey. You need your own conviction, your own discipline, your own relentless execution. Approval is a fleeting currency. It comes when you succeed, disappears when you struggle. So build your foundation without it. Let your internal standards be higher than any praise the outside world could offer. Next, learn to become hard to read, not out of secrecy, but out of strength. Let others wonder what you're building. Let them speculate while you refine. Keep your presence steady and your speech scarce. You are not obligated to update anyone on your progress. Silence is not an absence of activity. It's a mark of someone deeply engaged in something important. Picture the inventor, alone in his garage. Year after year, he works quietly, failing, adjusting, improving. Neighbors whisper, friends question. Some laugh behind his back, but he says nothing. He just builds. One day he opens the doors and unveils a machine that changes everything. Those who once mocked him now ask how he did it. But the answer was always in the silence. The silence gave him space. The silence gave him protection. The silence gave him power. Now turn the mirror on yourself. How much energy have you lost trying to explain your vision to those who never cared to understand it? How much momentum have you sacrificed in the pursuit of approval from people who don't have the courage to chase their own dreams? Every moment spent explaining is a moment taken from executing. Every word spent defending is a word taken from building. So what would happen if you stopped explaining and started expanding? What if, instead of seeking understanding, you sought mastery? What if, instead of broadcasting your intentions, you refined your actions? Your silence wouldn't be hiding. It would be guarding, not retreat, but reinforcement. The world does not need to see you in process. Let it see you in completion. Be silent, not out of fear, but out of focus. Let your growth be private until your results speak for you. Let your future unfold without needing to be predicted. Let your rise be so steady, so undeniable, that when the world finally notices, it's too late to stop you. You owe no one your blueprint. What you owe is to yourself. To protect your vision from premature exposure, to guard your mind like sacred ground, to keep your fire burning beneath still waters. Let them talk. Let them wonder. You build. And let your future do the talking. You are stronger without their applause. The need for applause is a quiet poison. It creeps in slowly, disguised as motivation, wrapped in encouragement. At first it feels harmless, even helpful. A few kind words, a nod of approval, and you're inspired to continue. But over time, something shifts. You begin shaping your life, not around what matters, but around what gets noticed. You adjust your rhythm to the crowd's clapping hands, and before long, you're no longer working for your purpose. You're performing for their praise. This is how greatness gets watered down, not through failure, but through distraction. The applause becomes a drug, and progress becomes a side effect, not the goal. But the man who learns to break free of this addiction, the man who chooses the path of quiet discipline, he becomes something different, something rare, something unshakable, because applause fades always. It is loud one day, silent the next. It lifts you up when you win, but it vanishes the moment you struggle. The world has a short memory and an even shorter attention span. If you build your foundation on their cheers, you will always need more of them to stand tall. But progress remains. No one can take it from you. It doesn't require permission or public approval. It is built in solitude, brick by brick, and it stands, whether or not a crowd ever notices. The strongest man is not the one cheered on by thousands. It is the one who continues moving forward when no one is watching. The one who wakes up early, trains in silence, studies without acknowledgement, and finishes without fanfare. His motivation doesn't come from applause. It comes from purpose. And because of that, he never needs an audience to keep going. This is rare because most men need to be seen, to feel valuable. They wait for the pat on the back, the good job, the acknowledgement. And if it doesn't come, they hesitate. They lose steam. They question the effort. But the master, he doesn't wait. He doesn't need the spotlight to validate his grind. He understands that progress made in the shadows is what prepares him for the day he must stand in the light. To become this kind of man, you must learn to be alone. Not lonely, but alone. You must learn to sit with your work without needing to update the world. You must let your progress be your proof. You must train your hands to build while your mouth remains closed. Speak with your results. Announce with your transformation. Let others discover your growth, not because you declared it, but because you became it. Picture a boxer training in the shadows. The gym is quiet. The air is heavy with sweat and repetition. There are no cameras, no fans, no interviews, just the sound of fists meeting bags, the rhythm of breath, the strain of muscle. He trains day after day, not for applause, but for war. And when the day of the fight comes, he steps into the ring without fear. His opponent trained for attention. He trained for readiness. That is the power of silent effort. That is what separates the loud from the legendary. Anyone can chase applause. Few can endure silence. But silence, is where character is forged, where vision is tested, where grit is formed. Now ask yourself, what truly drives you? Is it the mission or the noise? What happens to your momentum when no one notices your effort? Do you continue anyway, or do you pause, waiting to be seen before you move again? You must train your spirit to thrive in silence. You must feed your ambition with discipline, not attention. And you must let go of the belief that your effort only matters if someone else applauds it. Because applause is optional, but progress is not. The work must be done, with or without witnesses. The mountain must be climbed, with or without cheers. The mission must be fulfilled, especially in silence. Let your drive be internal. Let your reward be mastery. And when the world finally sees what you've become, let them wonder how you did it, with no one watching. The answer? You were stronger, without applause. What you don't say reveals who you are. The world watches your silence more closely than your speech. In a culture obsessed with opinions, noise, and reaction, silence stands out. It commands attention, not by shouting, but by refusing to. In every moment you choose not to respond, not to react, not to reveal, you show the depth of who you are, your control, your discipline, your clarity. These qualities are not seen in the words you broadcast, but in the restraint you master. There is a common myth that strength must be loud, that it must declare itself, argue its place, defend its honor. But true strength, it walks quietly. It enters a room with calm eyes and steady presence. It speaks only when the moment requires it, and even then, only with precision. This kind of strength doesn't need to overpower anyone. It doesn't rise to every challenge, or take every opportunity to argue. It listens longer than it talks. It observes. And when it acts, it does so with clarity that comes not from impulse but from thought. Why does this matter? Because restraint is not weakness, it is mastery. The world is filled with men who can shout, but rare is the man who can wait. The man who can absorb the sting of insult without letting it shape his mood. The man who can hear lies, slander, and foolishness, yet remain still. That man commands a kind of respect that noise can never earn. Your character is not built by how you defend yourself, but by what you choose not to defend. When you can hold your peace in the face of provocation, you send a clear message. I am not controlled by you. You reveal not your silence, but your sovereignty. You show that you live on your terms, not theirs. And this is where real power comes from, not from reaction, but from restraint. The less you reveal, the more you control. And the more you control, the more others respect your presence. People sense something different in a man who doesn't rush to explain himself, who doesn't collapse into emotional outbursts. They may not say it, but they feel it. Your silence becomes a signal, a quiet force, a presence that speaks even when you don't. To build this kind of power, you must become intentional. You must make silence a deliberate habit, not just a passive response. When emotions rise, when tension climbs, pause. Ask yourself before every word, is this necessary? Is this strategic? Or is this just my ego talking? The ego always wants to speak. It wants to be right. It wants to win the room. But the wise man knows that winning is not in the words, it's in the outcome. If silence brings peace, clarity, and strength, then silence wins. Picture a man insulted in public. The room holds its breath, waiting for a reaction. People expect him to fight back, to strike with sharper words, to defend himself. But he doesn't. He simply smiles, nods, and walks away. No rebuttal, no escalation, just composure. And in that moment, the insult is forgotten. But his silence is remembered, because it didn't come from fear, it came from fortitude. This is the kind of strength you must cultivate, the kind that doesn't chase reputation, it earns it, the kind that doesn't rise to every provocation, it transcends it. Your power is not proven through how much you can say, but through how much you can afford not to. Now reflect. What do your silences say about you? Are they born from composure or insecurity? Are you holding back because you don't know what to say, or because you know exactly what not to say? Silence can hide weakness, but it can also radiate wisdom. The difference is your intention behind it. Train yourself to speak less, not out of fear but out of focus. Master the power of holding back. use your silence as a tool of clarity, not confusion. Let others wonder. Let them talk. You stay grounded, because the man who controls his voice controls his life, and the man who controls his silence, he controls the room. What you don't say speaks louder than anything you ever could. The man who controls himself controls the outcome. Everything begins with control, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that disciplines yourself, your words, your emotions, your movements. This is the foundation of real power, not the appearance of strength, but the possession of it. The man who can sit in silence while others complain, who can keep his hand steady while others panic, who remains still while others scramble. He becomes the one others trust, the one others follow. Power doesn't come from overpowering. It comes from composure. Most men lose their strength, not because someone defeated them, but because they gave it away. With every outburst, every impulsive reaction, every moment of emotional leakage, they surrender their peace for the thrill of a response. And in that moment, they lose control, not just of the situation, but of themselves. You see it everywhere. A word spoken in haste ruins a relationship. A small offense triggers a war of egos. A rumor sparks rage, and suddenly a man is no longer leading his life. He's being led by it. The root of that chaos? Lack of self-restraint. It's not the world that breaks him. It's his inability to remain calm in it. But when you begin to turn your attention inward, something shifts. When you stop reacting and start observing, you step into a different kind of authority. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind that lets the storm rage while remaining still at the center. How do you become that kind of man? You practice. Not once, not occasionally, but daily. You start with the small irritations, the delayed message, the careless comment, the pointless argument. Instead of reacting, you breathe. You sit with the discomfort. You don't speak just to relieve tension. You choose silence. You let the emotion rise and fall without grabbing it. That's how control is built. Through intention, not impulse. And when bigger tests come, and they will, you are no longer ruled by reaction. You become the anchor others need. Picture a leader during a crisis. The room is tense. People are looking for direction. Their faces full of fear. All eyes turn to him. But he doesn't flinch. He doesn't bark orders. He listens. He watches. He takes a moment. And then, in a few calm words, he brings direction. Not because the storm ended, but because he never let the storm inside him. This kind of presence cannot be faked. It must be forged. In silence, in solitude, in the small choices made when no one is watching. When you master yourself, you stop chasing outcomes. You start deciding them. You're no longer a man reacting to life. You become the man who directs it. Ask yourself, how often do you lose peace by reacting too quickly? How many moments have you regretted because you moved too fast, spoke too soon, or let anger lead the way? Now ask, how much more power could you hold? How much more clarity could you keep if you just stayed still? Control is not a gift. It's a skill. It doesn't come naturally. It is built in the furnace of patience and tested in the heat of pressure. And once you have it, truly have it, you will never want to give it away again, because the man who controls himself controls everything. You rise when you stop explaining. There's a moment every driven man must face. A point where he realizes that trying to explain his path to those who don't share his vision is not only exhausting, but destructive. It's like handing over your blueprints to someone who doesn't understand architecture, then standing there while they poke holes in your design. Every time you attempt to justify your direction to someone who was never meant to follow it, you are stepping off your own road. You are giving away your edge. And worse, you are shifting your focus from the one thing that matters, building, to something that weakens you, defending. You weren't born to explain. You were born to create. Not everyone will see what you see. And that's exactly how it should be. Vision, by its very nature, is personal, sometimes painfully so. And when you try to translate that vision to small minds, to distracted ears, to those who fear the very change you're chasing, you dilute its power. You spend your fire, keeping others warm instead of forging ahead. You answer questions that only exist to slow you down. You waste hours clarifying what only time and proof can ever make clear. What most people won't tell you is this: explanations weaken your position. They shift your energy from doing to defending. And when you're defending, you're no longer building. You're caught in a performance loop, hoping your words can secure you understanding or permission. But the truth is, if someone needs an explanation to respect your effort, they were never going to respect your outcome. Let that sink in. The man who rises to something higher almost always does so quietly. He builds in silence. He learns in silence. He suffers setbacks in silence. And then, when the time comes, when the project is done, the discipline has sharpened and the foundation is secure, he presents it, not with noise but with results. He doesn't need to say a word. The outcome speaks. And it speaks with a tone that no argument ever could. This is the power of moving without announcing, of reserving your energy for your craft instead of giving it away in explanations. Not everyone will get it. Not everyone should. That's not a shortcoming in your vision. It's a sign that you're on a path uniquely yours. Those who are meant to understand will see it in time. And those who don't, let them sit with their questions while you move on your mission. Think of the young craftsman. He was laughed at, doubted, mocked. Not because he was wrong, but because he was early. He stopped inviting people into his process. He stopped offering updates. He closed the door, focused his mind, and went to work. And then, one day, he unveiled what he had been building. Not with a presentation, not with an argument, but with proof. And suddenly, no one had questions. They had respect, not because he convinced them, but because he no longer needed to. Now ask yourself, who are you still explaining yourself to? Whose doubts are still echoing in your mind long after the conversation ended? Who are you secretly performing for, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they'll finally understand? You don't owe the world your explanations. You owe yourself your evolution. Your responsibility is not to be understood. It is to become. To walk your path so fully that others either join you or get left behind. Speak less, build more. And when the moment arrives, let what you've created answer the questions they once asked. Because silence isn't avoidance. It's protection. It's choosing to preserve your momentum rather than draining it. And when the dust clears, when your work stands undeniable, your silence will have said everything that ever needed to be said. Your discipline in silence separates you. While others chase motivation, like a gust of wind that might carry them forward, you must chase something far more solid: consistency. The man who moves in silence wins, not because he works harder once or in bursts or when the stars align, but because he shows up every single day, without applause, without praise, without needing permission or proof that it's working. He keeps going, not because of how he feels, but because of who he's committed to becoming. That's the quiet divider between those who are great and those who are forgotten. Most people wait to feel inspired. They wait for the perfect moment, the right energy, the ideal circumstance. But time doesn't wait. Life doesn't wait. And neither should you. Discipline is not loud. It does not shout its worth. It whispers through early mornings. It hums through repeated tasks. It sighs through quiet evenings, filled with unrewarded work. And yet, it is this invisible rhythm that carves the path to greatness. You don't become different by doing what everyone else does. You become different by doing what others avoid. You do what they complain about. You repeat what they get bored of. You stay when they quit. You show up when it's hard. You finish when it's no longer exciting. You keep your word. To others, yes. But most importantly, to yourself. You guard your schedule like sacred ground. You say no to distraction, no to convenience, no to the easy way out. And you say yes to the dull, repetitive, demanding habits that forge real strength. Think of the mason. Each day, he picks up the same brick. He sets it with care. Then he does it again and again. Neighbors laugh. "Still laying bricks?" they ask with a smirk. He nods, never explaining, never justifying, just working, just building. Years pass, and while the others chase shortcut after shortcut, abandoning every unfinished foundation they once declared with passion, the mason's wall rises. One day the castle stands, unshakable, undeniable. The jokes stop. The questions turned to awe. But the mason never needed their praise. The work was always between him and the stone. The same is true for you. Your work, your real work, is not public. It is not about being noticed. It is about being devoted. If you can embrace the rhythm of discipline, if you can keep moving, even when you're tired, even when you feel uninspired, you will build what no one else can. So, ask yourself honestly, what could you build if you stopped needing novelty and chose discipline instead? What would your life look like if you stopped starting over and simply continued? What strength could you develop, not by doing something new, but by doing something reliably? Because it's your habits, not your hopes, that shape your legacy. And the strongest habits are born in silence. They are repeated in solitude. They are proven, not by the noise they make, but by the results they deliver. Let others chase excitement. You chase execution. Let others look for hacks. You lay your bricks. Let others ask for applause. You earn your crown. Discipline is not something you shout about. It's something you wear, not on your sleeve, but in your soul. It's your private crown, and you must wear it daily, even when no one sees it, especially then, because that's when it matters most. Silence makes you immune to drama. The world thrives on conflict. It feeds on noise, on arguments, on endless cycles of drama that devour time, energy, and purpose. Men shout over things they don't even believe in. Pride clashes with pride. Egos swell until they explode. And in all this chaos, strength is mistaken for volume. But real strength isn't found in winning arguments. It's found in winning at life. And to win in life, you must become immune to the noise, immune to drama, untouchable in the face of petty conflict. You were not born to answer every insult. You were not made to respond to every whisper, every rumor, every sideways glance. The moment you allow yourself to be pulled into every verbal tug-of-war, you lose ground. Not because you're wrong, but because you're distracted. And distraction is the thief of excellence. Every time you react to something small, you give away a piece of your edge. Every time you respond to gossip, you're feeding it. You're making it real. But when you remain silent, something remarkable happens. The drama dies. It dissolves. It starves from lack of attention. Your silence confuses your critics, drains your enemies, and protects your focus. This isn't about cowardice. It's about clarity. It's about knowing which battles are worth fighting and which are designed to pull you off track. You build your immunity to drama by choosing not to step into every ring. You don't respond to every comment. You don't insert yourself into every conflict. You stay grounded. You stay centered. You stay committed to your own mission, while others spin in circles, trying to provoke you. Think of a man walking through town. Rumors swirl. Accusations fly. People talk behind his back, eager to see him falter, hoping he'll crack and fight back. But he doesn't. He walks. He works. He improves. He does not explain himself. He doesn't lower his voice to the level of noise around him. And over time, the voices fade. The whispers die down. And the same people who once doubted him now respect him. Not because he shouted louder, but because he refused to play their game. He chose his purpose over his pride, and that choice made him untouchable. You must ask yourself, how much time are you wasting fighting battles that don't matter? How much energy is drained trying to win arguments that bring you no closer to your goals? What could you gain if you simply let your results speak for you? If you let your progress silence your critics? The man who rises above does not rise by accident. He rises by decision. He decides not to engage. He decides not to respond. He decides that his future is more important than his feelings, that his mission is more sacred than his ego, and that silence, steady, unmoved silence, is not weakness but armor. Armor against distraction. Armor against petty men with loud voices and small minds. Let others chase drama. You chase discipline. Let others react. You respond when necessary, and never from impulse. Let others fall apart. You hold your ground. Because your silence, backed by relentless action, becomes the most powerful answer of all. Not because it shouts, but because it stands. And over time, nothing stands taller than the man who stays focused, unbothered, and unwilling to descend into noise. So be above it. Be quiet. Be sharp. Let your work finish every conversation your words never started. Let silence be your armor. Let victory be your voice. Stillness creates the future you deserve. The life you want, the one that calls to you in quiet moments and restless nights, will not arrive by accident. It will not knock at your door or fall into your lap. It will be built, not in noise, not in chaos, not in the approval of others, but in silence, in solitude, in steady, deliberate effort. The life you seek will be born from stillness. But understand this: stillness is not the absence of movement. It is focused movement. It is not laziness, or waiting, or standing still. It is the decision to act with intention, to move with clarity, to hold back noise so that your direction can be heard. It is choosing your steps instead of chasing distractions. It is what separates the man who wanders from the man who builds. Every man who rises must first retreat. He must withdraw from the world long enough to hear his own thoughts. He must learn the strength of solitude, not as isolation, but as refinement. The loudest voices outside will always pull at you. They'll offer advice, demand answers, tempt urgency. But your destiny cannot be dictated by noise. It must be designed in silence. The man who succeeds is the one who builds in the dark before he walks in the light. He sits quietly with himself. He asks the hard questions. What do I truly want? What am I willing to give up to get there? What must I change in myself to rise? These questions cannot be answered in crowds. They require space, stillness, honesty. And once those answers come, he begins the work, not loudly, not publicly, but with discipline, every day, every hour, carving his future out of raw stone. You are not here to drift. You are not meant to spend your life reacting to every event, every opinion, every demand that comes your way. You are here to plant with purpose, water with patience, and harvest with faith. Each day becomes a brick, each decision a tool, each habit a layer of the foundation that will hold the life you are crafting. Without intention, time becomes erosion. With intention, time becomes your builder. So, create your schedule with care. Guard it as if your life depends on it, because it does. Choose your companions with intention. The wrong company can uproot everything you've planted. Speak only when your words build something worth standing for. Gossip, complaining, useless opinions, they tear down the very structure you are trying to raise. And when you work, let it be on things that move you forward. Busyness is not progress. Noise is not momentum. Only focused labor builds legacy. Picture a captain sitting at his desk at dawn. The world is still asleep. The sea outside is dark, waiting. He leans over the map, studying every detail. He charts the course. He makes decisions in silence that will guide an entire crew through waves and storms. No one sees this moment. No one claps. No one posts it online. But without that still, private planning, no voyage would survive. That quiet moment becomes the compass for everything that follows. Now ask yourself, are you building your life or letting it happen to you? Are you navigating by design or drifting with no anchor? Do you move because you've chosen to, or because something outside has pulled you? Most men wake up and fall into the day, but a few rise into it. They step forward with a plan. They take hold of the hours before the hours take hold of them. They aren't driven by chaos. They drive through it. And what powers them is not adrenaline or applause. It's the stillness they've built inside. Stillness gives birth to power. Power that is not loud or boastful, but grounded, calm, unshakable. This kind of power doesn't shout. It simply moves, slowly and steadily, until its presence is undeniable. And from that presence, a new life is built. One decision, one habit, one act of focused will, at a time. You don't need to wait for the right moment. The right moment is when you decide to begin. Sit with your vision. Clarify your direction. Strip away everything that doesn't serve your purpose. And in the silence, begin laying bricks. Let others chase chaos. You build, in stillness, in strength, and in silence. Because that is where the life you deserve begins. It's time to turn inward. Focus on your path. Let your silence become your strength. The less you say, the more you build. Stop chasing validation. Start mastering yourself. When you move in silence, life moves around you. Embrace the stillness and watch everything begin to fall into place.